Admiral Kim Woo-jin walked slowly into the massive chamber of the Galactic Council. His black uniform was clean and pressed, but it looked simple compared to the shining armor and exotic clothing worn by the alien delegates around him. The chamber. It was huge, with floating platforms that held representatives from dozens of different worlds. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of living crystal, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy. The human admiral stopped in the center of the room where a holographic display waited for him. His weathered face showed no emotion, even though he could hear the alien voices. Already starting to whisper and laugh, he had gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles, but his back was straight and his hands were steadied. Park So-young stood beside him, carrying a small data pad. She was much younger than the admiral, with long black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her glasses reflected the blue light from the holographic projectors, and she tried not to show how nervous she felt. This was the first time humans had been allowed into the main council chamber after decades of asking for membership. The Supreme Chancellor rose from his throne at the far end of the chamber. He was ancient, even by galactic standards, with skin that looked like polished stone and eyes that glowed with inner fire. His voice boomed across the room when he spoke, making the air itself vibrate with power. Welcome humans to the Galactic Council. You have requested membership in our great alliance for many years. Now you must prove that your species deserves a place among the civilized worlds. Show us what your military can offer for the protection of galactic peace. Admiral Kim pressed a button on his datapad and the holographic display came to life, showing detailed images of 50 human warships. The ships looked plain and simple, with gray metal hulls and basic weapon systems. They had no fancy decorations or alien technology visible on their surfaces, just straight lines and practical design that reminded everyone of primitive industrial equipment. The moment the display activated, the chamber erupted in laughter. The Vrexian ambassador pointed one of his 6 clawed arms at the ships, and his voice was full of mockery. These crude vessels dare to call themselves warships. Our cargo ships have better armor plating. Look at those pathetic plasma cannons. They are centuries behind our current technology. A delegate from the Zephyrian Empire stood up on her floating platform. Her body was made of living gas that sparkled with electricity, and when she laughed, it sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Surely this is some kind of joke, she said. These humans cannot be serious about joining our military alliance with such primitive equipment. Even our mining drones carry more advanced weapons. More voices joined in the mockery from every corner of the chamber. Alien species that had never agreed on anything before found common ground in laughing at humanity. The insect-like mantoids clicked their mandibles in amusement, while the crystalline geodians made sounds like breaking glass that passed for laughter in their cultured Park felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she kept her expression neutral. She had spent 15 years of her life developing the technologies hidden inside those simple-looking ships, working in secret laboratories. Deep underground on Earth, she had reverse-engineered alien technology that had been recovered from crashed ships and abandoned outposts. The council members had no idea what they were really looking at. The Korthok representative was a massive warrior with scarred armor and weapons hanging from his belt. He stood up, and his voice was a savage growl that needed no translation. I have destroyed entire fleets that were better equipped than this. The humans insult us by bringing these toys to show perhaps they should return to their little planet and play with model ships. Instead, Marl Kim watched the display continue, showing technical specifications that made the aliens laugh even harder. The ship's maximum speed was listed as barely faster than light travel. Their shields could only deflect basic energy weapons. Their hulls were made of simple steel alloys mixed with titanium. Nothing special about any of it, according to the Reduce Commander Lee. Minho was watching this humiliation from the bridge of his flagship Soul Pride through a secure communication link. His crew of 200 humans sat at their stations listening to the alien laughter through the audio feed. Many of them had family members who lived in the outer colonies that were now threatened by hostile alien forces. Behind Lee, the entire human defensive fleet waited in formation in empty space, far from the council station. 50 ships that looked exactly like the ones being mocked in the chamber. Each one carried a crew that had trained for years preparing for this moment. They had practiced in secret conducted war games that pushed them to their limits and studied every piece of alien technology they could find. The Supreme Chancellor raised one massive hand, and the laughter slowly died down, his glowing eyes fixed on Admiral Kim with what might have been pity or disgust. It is clear that humanity is not ready for membership in our alliance. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your technology has advanced beyond this primitive level, you may apply again. But the counselor from the hegemony worlds was not finished with his entertainment. He was a blob of purple flesh, with dozens of eyes covering his surface, and his voice bubbled like boiling liquid. Why not give them a chance to prove themselves in combat? After all, actions speak louder than specifications. Several other delegates picked up on this idea and began suggesting various tests. The humans could fight some pirates, or maybe defend a small outpost against raiders. It would be amusing to watch their primitive ships try to accomplish real military objectives. Real military objectives. Admiral Kim finally spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. His voice was calm and steady, without any trace of anger or fear, despite the humiliation he had just endured. Honored counselors, humanity appreciates your consideration. We are prepared to demonstrate our capabilities in whatever manner you deem appropriate. Darpark touched a small device hidden in her jacket pocket. It was a quantum communicator that could send signals faster than light directly to the human fleet. The device was smaller than her thumb, but it represented technology that was decades ahead of anything the Council possessed. She had built it herself, using principles that the galaxy's greatest scientists claimed were impossible. The laughter started again as delegates began placing bets on how quickly the human ships would be destroyed in whatever test the Council devised. Some thought it would take hours, others believed minutes would be enough. The Mantoid ambassador suggested they should have medical ships standing by to rescue human survivors, though several other species pointed out that most hostile aliens did not take prisoners. Kim Woojin stood perfectly still as the mockery continued around him. He had expected this reaction. The human leadership had planned for this exact scenario, knowing that the galaxy's civilized species would judge them based on appearances alone. That was exactly what they. One of the element of surprise was humanity's greatest weapon, and they had spent decades preparing to use it. The Supreme Chancellor finally called for order, and the chamber fell silent again. Very well, humans, you will have your chance to prove yourselves, but do not expect mercy from the enemies you will face. The galaxy is not a safe place for the weak or unprepared. As the session continued, Admiral Kim allowed himself a small internal smile. The Council had no idea what they were about to witness. Humanity had learned long ago that in a universe full of hostile aliens, the smart move was to appear weak while secretly becoming strong. The mockery phase was ending, and soon the real demonstration would begin. The Supreme Chancellor leaned forward on his crystalline throne, and his glowing eyes seemed to pierce through Admiral Kim like burning lasers. The ancient being had ruled the Galactic Council for over 1,000 years, and had seen countless species rise and fall, but something about these humans made him curious in a dangerous way. Since you insist on wasting our valuable time with your pathetic display, we shall provide proper entertainment for the Council. The Chancellor gestured with one massive stone hand toward the viewing screens that lined the chamber walls. The screens flickered to life, showing star maps and tactical displays that made several alien delegates lean forward with interest. Park felt her heart begin to race. As she watched the displays, her scientific mind immediately began analyzing the data streams. But what she saw made her stomach drop. The energy signatures and ship classifications appearing on screen were from some of the most dangerous military forces in the galaxy. The Korthok Armada approaches your current position, the Chancellor announced with something that might have been amusement in his ancient voice. 27 battleships of a species we recently conquered. They were once the most feared warriors in 3 sectors, until we demonstrated the futility of resistance against Council authority. Captain Jung Haewon was monitoring communications from her command station aboard the human vessel Busan Defender when the enemy fleet signatures appeared on her sensors. She had been a naval officer for 12 years and had studied every major military engagement in recorded galactic history, but seeing 27 Korthok battleships on her tactical display made her hands shake slightly. The Korthok ships began materializing out of hyperspace. Like massive predators emerging from dark water, each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, with hulls that looked like they had been forged from black metal and covered in weapon Ports that glowed with barely contained energy, their design was purely functional, built for one purpose only: to destroy everything that opposed. Vemyung stared at her sensor readings in disbelief. Each Korthok battleship was 3 times larger than the biggest human vessel and carried enough firepower to level entire cities. The enemy fleet moved in perfect formation, with military precision that spoke of centuries of conquest and warfare. Their ships had fought against dozens of different alien species and had never known defeat until the Council finally crushed them back. In the Council chamber, the alien delegates were starting to look uncomfortable. Several species began whispering among themselves in their various languages, but the universal translators made their concerns clear to everyone present. This was supposed to be a test, not an execution, and even the most bloodthirsty council members seemed surprised by the Chancellor appearance choice. The Mantoid ambassador clicked his mandibles nervously as he spoke. Supreme Chancellor, perhaps. This demonstration is too extreme for a first evaluation. The humans have not yet had time to prepare for combat. Against such formidable opponents, maybe we should consider a less challenging scenario, but the Chancellor raised his hand for silence, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The humans requested membership in our military alliance. If they cannot face real threats, then they have no place. Among us, the Korthok will serve as an excellent measuring tool for their capabilities. Admiral Kim stood motionless in the center of the chamber as panic began to spread through the alien delegates, even species that had been laughing at humanity just minutes before were now expressing concern about witnessing what they expected to be a complete massacre. The holographic displays showed the Korthok fleet moving into attack formation, with weapons charging and shields powering up. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Dong-wook monitored the communications array from his station aboard the human command ship. Seoul pried his translation systems. We're picking up multiple alien languages, and the content was consistently the same expressions of shock, fear, and what sounded like genuine pity for the humans who were about to face annihilation. The Korthok fleet commander broadcast on all frequencies, and his voice was a savage growl that sent chills through every listening being in the galaxy. His message was simple and direct, in the way that only apex predators could manage humans. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Continue this foolishness, and we will hunt down every member of your species across the stars, Commander Lee. Minho felt the Soul Pride respond to his commands as he prepared his crew for what was coming. His bridge officers moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons, systems, and defensive protocols, but their faces showed the strain of facing impossible odds. The Korthok had destroyed civilizations that were far more advanced than humanity appeared to Beatty. Enemy ships moved closer, and their massive hulls blotted out stars as they approached. Each Korthok vessel bristled with energy cannons, plasma projectors, and missile launchers that could tear through conventional armor like tissue paper. Their shields glowed with power levels that exceeded anything in the human. Technical Database Dr. Park watched the tactical displays with growing anxiety, but her hand moved to the quantum communicator hidden in her jacket. The device felt warm against her fingers, and she knew that soon she would need to send the signal that would change everything. The Council expected to witness humanity destruction, but they were about to see something very different. The Rexian ambassador, who had been mocking the human ships earlier, was now backing away from his viewing platform, his 6 arms trembling as he spoke. This has gone too far. The humans should be allowed to retreat with dignity rather than face certain destruction. The Korthok showed no mercy to anyone. Several other delegates began voicing similar concerns, but their words were drowned out by the communication systems as the Korthok fleet commander spoke again. His message was even more savage than before, promising to burn human colonies, reduce Earth itself to radioactive ash, and ensure that humanity's brief moment in galactic history would end in screaming terror. Captain Jung received tactical updates from her sensor operators as the enemy fleet moved into final attack positions. The Korthok ships were spreading out to prevent any possibility of escape, while their weapons locked onto human targets. Every indicator on her displays showed that the battle was about to begin. The council chamber fell into an eerie silence as everyone realized what they were about to witness. The most advanced military alliance in galactic history was going to watch a relatively primitive species get completely annihilated by warriors who had conquered half a dozen star systems before their own defeat. But something strange was beginning to happen aboard the human vessels. Crew members, who had seemed nervous and uncertain just moments before, were now moving with sudden confidence and precision. Hidden panels throughout their ships began to slide open, revealing equipment that should not have existed on such primitive vessels. And Nam Gi-woo watched from her station as systems that had been dormant suddenly came online throughout the human fleet. The ships themselves seemed to be changing, somehow becoming something different than what they had appeared to be. The transformation was subtle at first, but growing stronger with each passing second. Admiral Kim finally spoke again, and his voice carried a quiet confidence that made several alien delegates stop their panicked conversations. "Honored counselors, you have spent so long enjoying peace that you have forgotten what real warfare looks like. Humanity has not forgotten. We remember very well indeed." The Korthok fleet commander roared his final challenge across all communication channels, but for the first time in his long career of conquest, something felt wrong. His warrior instincts, honed through countless battles, were screaming warnings that his technology could not explain. The human ships looked helpless, but something about them had changed. Dr. Park pressed the activation stud on her quantum communicator and sent a signal that traveled faster than light to reach every human vessel in the fleet. The message was simple and had been planned for years. "Execute Protocol 7. The galaxy is watching." As the signal reached the human ships, the real test was about to begin, but it would not be a test of human weakness as the Council expected. Instead, it would be a demonstration of just how dangerous it was to underestimate a species that had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. The laughter had already stopped, and soon there would be only stunned silence. Engineer Nam Ji-woo watched in amazement as the Inchin hammer began to transform around her. The ship that had looked like a simple metal box just moments before was now revealing its true nature. Hidden panels slid away with silent precision, exposing surfaces that seemed to bend light itself around them. The hull plating that had appeared crude and basic was actually composed of materials that should not have existed, according to Galactic science. Transformation was happening throughout the human fleet, but it was so subtle that the Korthok sensors were not detecting the changes yet. What looked like simple maintenance ports were actually weapon systems that operated on principles. The galaxy had never seen metal that seemed plain and industrial. Was actually composed of elements that had been artificially created in laboratories deep beneath Earth's surface. Park smiled for the first time since arriving at the Council station as she watched the tactical displays change. The years of working in secret had finally paid off. Every crashed alien ship that had ever been recovered by human forces had been taken apart piece by piece and studied until its secrets were understood. Then those secrets had been improved upon. Using human engineering and scientific methods, Captain Jung felt her ship respond differently as the Busan Defender real capabilities came online. The vessel moved like a living creature, now responding to her thoughts through neural interfaces that connected directly to her brainstem. The connection was so smooth and natural that it felt like the ship had become an extension of her own body. The human crews throughout the fleet were also changing as their hidden enhancements activated. Genetic modifications that had been dormant in their systems suddenly came online, making them faster, stronger, and more intelligent than any baseline human. Neural implants began processing information at superhuman speeds, while their reflexes became quick enough to dodge energy blasts. Commander Lee watched his tactical display transform as the Soul Pride revealed its true sensor capabilities. The Korthok fleet that had seemed so threatening just minutes before was now showing dozens of weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Their energy distribution systems had flaws. Their armor had gaps, and their weapons charged in predictable patterns that could be easily. The Galactic Council chamber fell into stunned silence as their most advanced sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The primitive human fleet was changing before their eyes, evolving into something that defied every law of physics. They understood energy readings were spiking beyond their instruments' ability to measure, and the space around the human ships was beginning to warp in ways that should have been impossible. The Supreme Chancellor leaned forward on his throne, his ancient eyes widening with something that might have been fear. "For the first time in centuries, what are you?" he whispered in a voice that carried across the chamber, despite being barely audible. "How long have you been hiding this power from the Galaxy Admiral?" Kim stepped forward, and his voice carried a weight of authority that made even the most arrogant delegates step back. "Honored counselors, You have spent so long enjoying the peace that our protection provides that you have forgotten. What real military power looks like, humanity remembers, because we have never stopped studying Wartha Korthok. Fleet Commander felt his warrior instincts screaming warnings as his sensors finally registered the true threat level of the human vessels. His species had conquered dozens of worlds and faced every type of military technology the galaxy could produce, but what he was seeing now was completely beyond his understanding. Our park activated additional systems that had been hidden throughout the human ships, revealing technologies that the Council had believed were purely theoretical quantum processors that could calculate battle scenarios millions of times faster than organic minds. Energy weapons that drew power directly from subspace, and defensive systems that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. The transformation was complete now, and the human fleet hung in space like 50 predators that had finally revealed their true nature to their prey. The ships looked nothing like what they had appeared to be just minutes before. They were sleek, deadly, and utterly alien to anything the galaxy had ever produced. Captain Jung received updated tactical information as her ship real sensors came online. The Korthok battleships were massive and heavily armed, but their technology was centuries behind what humanity had secretly developed. Their shields could be bypassed, their armor could be penetrated, and their weapons could be neutralized with surgical precision. The alien delegates in the council chamber pressed against their viewing screens, trying to understand what they were witnessing. Several species that had considered themselves the galaxy supreme military powers were already beginning to recalculate their own defensive capabilities, wondering how many other primitive races might be hiding similar technological advances. Admiral Kim's voice echoed through the chamber as he delivered his final revelation. "We are what you made us. Every time you ignored our peaceful messages, every time you dismissed our diplomatic efforts, you taught us that strength was the only language the galaxy understood. We learned that lesson very well indeed." Streams of superheated plasma and particle beams converged on Captain Jung's position, carrying enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The alien delegates in the flash of light instead, the Busan Defender, seemed to dance between the incoming fire, moving with impossible grace as space itself bent around its hull. The devastating attack passed harmlessly through empty space where the human vessel had been microseconds before weapons. What emerged from their weapons ports was not plasma or energy beams, but something far more terrifying: projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions. Korthok Fleet Commander watched in disbelief as his flagship massive shields flickered and died under the human assault. His weapons that had destroyed countless enemy vessels seemed to have no effect on the human ships, while their return fire was cutting through his armor like it was made of paper. His centuries of military experience, each ship working in harmony with the others through quantum-entangled communications that operated faster than light. They struck from impossible angles, appearing behind enemy vessels that should have been able to track their movements and disappearing before return. Fire could be targeted. Dar Park watched the battle unfold with professional satisfaction as decades, but rather their ability to learn from every enemy they encountered and improve upon everything they discovered. The galaxy had been teaching them warfare for years without realizing it. Commander Lee flagship demonstrated capabilities that the Council had thought were purely theoretical. The Soul Pride opened portals in space itself, allowing it to attack enemies from multiple directions simultaneously. Its weapons did not just destroy targets, they unmade them, returning solid matter to component atoms with surgical precision that left no debris behind. The Korthok fleet that had been so confident just minutes before began. Veteran warriors who had never known defeat found themselves helpless against enemies that seemed to exist outside normal reality. Captain Bay Inzuk commanded the human fleet medical vessel Soul Mercy, but even their hospital ship mounted weapons that defied galactic understanding. As Korthok survivors ejected in escape pods, they found themselves caught in stasis fields that preserved them perfectly while removing their ability to fight or communicate with their remaining forces. The space around the battle zone filled with wreckage as Korthok battleships that had seemed invincible were systematically dismantled by human weapons. The alien delegates watching from the council chamber could barely process what they were seeing as the galaxy most feared military force was swept aside like toys. Engineer Nam watched her damage control. The Korthok had thrown everything they had at the humans, but their attacks had been completely ineffective against technology that operated. Korthok vessels either surrendered or were disabled by human forces. The mighty armada that had conquered star systems was reduced to floating debris and helpless survivors in less time than it took most species to charge their weapons. Admiral Kim voice carried across the communication channels as he addressed the remaining Korthok forces. Your surrender is accepted. Medical, who fought bravely against superior opponents. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was deafening as the alien delegates tried to process what they had just witnessed. The mighty Korthok armada, a single human casualty, the primitive fleet they had been mocking, was now revealed as the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Kim image appeared on every screen in the chamber, transmitted directly from his command post through quantum communication systems that operated beyond the council. Understanding, his weathered face showed no emotion, but his eyes held a weight of authority that made even the Supreme Chancellor shift uncomfortably on his throne. Honored counselors, this concludes our membership examination. We trust that our qualifications for joining your alliance are now sufficiently clear. His voice was calm and measured, but carried an undertone that suggested the galaxy balance of power had just shifted. Permanently Fleet Captain Shin Yu-jin coordinated the cleanup operation as human ships moved through the debris field with mechanical precision. Medical teams began treating Korthok survivors with professional efficiency that shocked the watching aliens. These humans could kill with terrifying effectiveness, but they could also show mercy with equal skill. Dr. Park activated her quantum communicator again, sending signals that reached every corner of human space faster than light could travel. Across the galaxy, human defensive installations that had been disguised as research stations, mining platforms, and merchant vessels began revealing their true nature as advanced military outposts. The Supreme Chancellor, ancient voice, cracked with age and something that might have been fear as he spoke. How long have you been hiding this level of technological advancement from the galactic community? His species had ruled through military superiority for thousands of years, but what he had just seen made their greatest weapons look primitive. Commander Lee responded from his bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing the true extent of human military deployment. We are what you forced us to become. Every time you ignored our peaceful overtures, every time you dismissed our attempts at diplomacy, you taught us that only strength matters in galactic politics. We have learned that lesson very thoroughly. Navigation Officer Han Selbin reported that additional human fleets were emerging from hyperspace around key strategic positions throughout the galaxy. Earth Defensive Network was revealing itself as hundreds of ships that had been hiding as civilian vessels now showed their real nature as advanced warships positioned at every major trade route and military installation. The Galactic Council members realized with growing horror that humanity had not just built a secret fleet, they had been infiltrating galactic civilization for decades, learning, studying, and positioning themselves for exactly this moment. The primitives they had dismissed and ignored were already inside their defenses with capabilities that exceeded anything they possessed. Darpark revealed the true scope of the human intelligence operation through her neural link to the Council communication systems. Human researchers throughout the galaxy had been mapping every military base, every trade route, every weakness in the Council defenses. What had appeared to be scientific curiosity was actually the most comprehensive espionage network in galactic history. The alien delegates began frantically checking their own security systems as they realized the implications. Every human scientist who had visited their worlds, every researcher who had studied their technology, every diplomat who had attended their meetings, had been gathering intelligence for this moment. Their entire civilization had been compromised without them knowing it. Captain Jung received status reports from human installations across the galaxy confirming that the revelation was proceeding according to plan. Colonies that had seemed vulnerable were now showing defensive capabilities that made them virtually impregnable. Research stations became command centers, and the entire human sphere of influence transformed into an unassailable network of fortified positions. The Supreme Chancellor rose slowly from his throne, his ancient form trembling with the weight of realization the galaxy that he had ruled for centuries was no longer under his control. A species that had seemed primitive and harmless had systematically undermined every assumption about military power and political control. Admiral Kim stepped forward as the holographic displays showed the full extent of human military deployment across known space, the Earth offers the galaxy a simple choice. We can work together as partners for mutual benefit and protection, or we can impose the peace that your council has failed to maintain. The decision is entirely yours to make. The transformation of galactic politics was immediate and irreversible. As the full implications of humanity revelation became clear, every species that had dismissed Earth as a primitive backwater now understood that they had been living under the protection of the galaxy's most advanced military power without even knowing it. The alien delegates whispered among themselves in dozens of different languages, but their meaning was universally clear. Fear had replaced mockery, respect had replaced contempt, and humanity had emerged as the dominant force in galactic civilization in the span of a single devastating demonstration. Bark began transmitting detailed technical specifications to the Council databases, showing the true scope of human technological advancement. Energy weapons that drew power from parallel dimensions, defensive systems that could manipulate fundamental forces and propulsion. Technology that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. Commander Lee received confirmation that human forces had taken strategic positions throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for centuries suddenly became safe as human patrol vessels emerged from hiding. To begin active security operations, the Supreme Chancellor struggled to maintain his composure as he realized that his ancient authority had been rendered obsolete in a matter of minutes. The species he had ruled for millennia were now looking to the humans for leadership and protection. His 1,000-year reign was ending not through conquest, but through irrelevance. Captain Jung coordinated with human commanders across the galaxy as they began implementing new security protocols. Planets that had paid tribute to avoid destruction now found themselves under the protection of forces that made their former oppressors look like children. Playing with toys, Admiral Kim addressed the assembled council with the gravity of someone who understood that history was being written in real time. The age of easy conquest and casual oppression ends today. Humanity will not tolerate the exploitation of weaker species or the abuse of military power for personal gain. The Vrexian ambassador, who had been mocking human ships just hours before, now prostrated himself before the holographic display showing Admiral Kim. "We pledge our complete loyalty to the new galactic order," he declared in a voice that shook with genuine terror. "Please show mercy to those who acted out of ignorance rather than malice." Similar declarations of loyalty and submission began coming from delegates throughout the chamber as species that had never cooperated before found common ground in their fear of human retaliation. The galaxy's most fractious political body was achieving unprecedented unity through shared recognition of superior power. Park monitored communication channels as news of the demonstrations spread throughout. Civilized space governments that had been planning military campaigns suddenly found themselves reconsidering their options, while criminal organizations that had operated with impunity began looking for places to hide. The council chamber's main display activated, showing a real-time map of galactic space with human positions marked in blue. The network of bases, installations, and fleets formed a comprehensive grid that covered every major system and trade route, leaving no doubt about humanity ability to project power anywhere. In known space engineer, Nam received reports from human technical teams as they began sharing selected technologies with allied species. Medical advances that could extend lifespans, energy systems that could power entire worlds, and manufacturing techniques that could end scarcity were offered as symbols of the benefits that cooperation with humanity could provide. Commander Lee transmitted new fleet deployment orders. As human ships settled into their roles as galactic peacekeepers, the transition was remarkably smooth, considering the magnitude of the change, as human forces simply began doing what they had been secretly preparing to do for decades. The Supreme Chancellor finally spoke the words that would define the new era of galactic history, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitable change. The Galactic Council recognizes humanity as a founding member with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities. Your fleet will assume the role of protector for all civilized worlds. As human ships took their positions throughout the galaxy, one truth became clear to every watching species. The age of uncertainty and fear was ending, replaced by something that had never existed before in galactic history: true security. backed by overwhelming power wielded by a species that had proven they could show both devastating force and unexpected mercy. Admiral Kim, final words echoed through the council chamber and across every communication network in civilized space. The galaxy will know peace, not because the strong choose to show restraint, but because those with the power to enforce it have decided that civilization deserves protection. The laughter that had filled the chamber at the beginning of the session was now just a memory, replaced by the quiet respect that civilized beings showed to those who held the power of life and death over entire worlds. Humanity had arrived not as supplicants seeking membership, but as guardians who would reshape galactic civilization according to their own vision of justice and peace.